I've never done a video about the person you're about to hear about in this video until today. But I think I might have mentioned about him in passing in videos and commentaries that I've done about what happened back in January. But if you don't know who this man is, this is Brian Sicknick, and he was one of the, if not the only officer that died during that Capitol invasion back in January. Well, now this news that just came out is going to make it very sketchy for the prosecution when it comes to trying to get convictions of the people that were involved with his death. Because see, this man actually had something sprayed at him by the protesters, and like I said, those protesters had a little bit of everything that day. The sprays, metal pipes, and all types of little weapons that they could find and use. But this guy was sprayed with something, and he ended up, dying from that. And I think he probably got some other injuries too, but he ended up dying. Well, now it's just come out and says that they did an autopsy, and it came back allegedly saying that he suffered 2 strokes and died of natural causes. When I said that, I said, get the fuck out of here with that bullshit. Because that does not even remotely begin to sound like anything that is even halfway true. You mean to tell me this guy actually got sprayed with some stuff? He probably got hit with some things, and that's what you came back with as a result, that he died of natural causes and 2 strokes. If he died of, first off, natural causes, I highly doubt that. But if he was to die of a stroke, let's hypothetically say that he had 2 strokes. It most likely came from what happened that day. I wonder, did they ask, did this man have a history of a stroke? Has he ever had a stroke in the past? Like maybe something minor that he was able to recover from? Does he have a family history of strokes? They probably didn't even ask that question. That's usually a question they ask when it comes to situations such as that. Like if you have people, like if you get heart disease or a heart attack or something like that, they'll always ask, do you have a family history? Or if you get cancer, do you have a family history of cancer in your family, so on and so forth. The same thing with strokes, because it could be something that could be passed on. But other than that, I don't believe that so-called finding that he died because of 2 strokes in the natural causes. When people say that palm color is on code, let me tell you something. Yes, we know they are on code against us. That's par for the course. But when they want to really get their way, they'll get on code even against their own. Now, here's a double whammy. This guy was not only PC like them, but he also was a cop. Now, they claim to love so much the boys in blue. Wouldn't he be considered a boy in blue, or was a boy in blue? Yet look at how they acted in that moment right there. And I don't know if he was in military personnel or not, but let's hypothetically say he was. Then that's another one right there, because they claim to be so patriotic. See, it's stuff like this that happened on that day that exposed the typical American PC individual as so fake and phony. But this time, the world got to see what we had been talking about when it comes to them for many, many, many years in real time. See, the thing is, they lowballed this so much with his situation, his death, because they're trying to lowball what happened back in January, as if we supposed to just forget about what we saw that day, saw and heard that day, what the whole world and saw and heard that day. That's kind of unforgettable when you think about it. Like, think about it. A year from that day, they're going to be talking about it. They're going to be like, this day on January 6th, this time last year, this happened. Then they're going to revisit it 2 years from now, and the same thing's going to happen again. That thing has literally cemented itself into history, sort of like 9/11. They're going to talk about that for years to come. And it's probably going to end up in history books, but PC going to try their best not to put it there, because they're going to want to erase this as much as they possibly can. Because in order to, to erase whatever they do is good for humanity, or in their case, mankind. Let me go ahead and get into this. Capitol Police Officer Brian D. Sicknick suffered 2 strokes and died of natural causes a day after he confronted rioters at the January 6th insurrection, the district chief medical examiner has ruled. The ruling released Monday will make it difficult for prosecutors to pursue homicide charges in the officer's death, and that's probably why they did that, because they knew them homicide charges were coming. So they say, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to say he got 2 strokes, he died of natural causes, and it happened the day after. Not the day of, but the day after. 2 men are accused of assaulting Sicknick by spraying a powerful chemical irritant at him during the siege, but prosecutors have not tied that exposure with Sicknick's death. And that's the thing. By them saying that he died of natural causes, they probably, it's going to be hard for them to try to tie that in, because then that could have proven right there or leaned heavily on them having a homicide case. But that's what they're trying to get away from. In an interview with the Washington Post, Francisco J. Diaz, the medical examiner, said the autopsy found no evidence the 42-year-old suffered an allergic reaction to chemical irritants, which Diaz said would have caused Sicknick's throat to quickly seize. Diaz also said there's no evidence of internal or external injuries. Diaz said Sicknick suffered 2 strokes at the base of the brainstem caused by a clot in an artery that supplies blood to that area of the body. Diaz said that he could not comment on whether Sicknick had pre-existing medical conditions. Remember what I said about, did he have a history of having a stroke? They never asked that. They need to look into that. But then again, I don't really trust this Diaz person to look into that. So they need to find someone else. They maybe need to ask a family member. Did they reach out to the family and ask them, did he have a stroke in the past? Like, was minor that he recovered from? Then and only then would I believe this man had a stroke. But if they can't bring that up, then no. And even if he did so-called suffer a stroke this time, it didn't come from whatever he suffered from before if he had a stroke in the past. It came from what happened that day. And no one's going to sit up here and try to insult my intelligence and tell me otherwise. Sort of like what they're trying to do with this story. They said citing privacy laws. So now it's basically saying, oh, we can't go into it because of privacy laws. Interesting how it's now private, because any other time they'll find a way to make it public. In the days after the riot, police and the Justice Department official attributed Sicknick's death to his efforts to contain the riot. Well, there you go. They caused it. Democratic House managers arguing for then President Donald Trump's impeachment says Sicknick was killed by rioters, citing a New York Times story that said police initially believed Sicknick had been struck with a fire extinguisher. The Times later updated the story, saying there's no evidence of blunt force trauma, but exactly what caused Sicknick's death has remained unclear for more than 14 weeks. Efforts to reach Sicknick's family on Monday were not successful, and Capitol Police said in a statement that the family had asked for privacy. I hope they didn't pay that family off. Like, it's so many red flags with this already. Diaz's ruling does not mean Sicknick was not assaulted or that the violent events at the Capitol did not contribute to his death. The medical examiner noted Sicknick was among the officers who engaged the mob and said all that transpired played a role in his condition. Then why don't they lean heavily onto that? They keep leaning on that this man had 2 strokes and died of natural causes. The Capitol Police said in its statement that the ruling does not change the fact that Officer Brian Sicknick died in the line of duty, courageously defending Congress and the Capitol. The agency said it will never forget Officer Sicknick's bravery, nor the bravery of any officer on January 6th who risked their lives to defend our democracy. Christopher Macaroli, a former federal prosecutor who handled violent crime cases before grand juries in D.C. Superior Court and U.S. District Court, said a ruling of a death by natural causes does make it more difficult to bring a homicide prosecution. Macaroli said additional evidence of some conduct by rioters could emerge independently, which prosecutors could argue contributed to the strokes, but he said that any defense attorney would use that medical examiner's conclusion as clear out evidence of reasonable doubt. In explaining the decision, the medical examiner's office provided an updated timeline leading up to Sicknick's death. A statement says Sicknick collapsed 7 hours and 40 minutes after he was sprayed and then died nearly 24 hours after that. See, that's the thing. They don't even specify what he was sprayed with. They just say he was sprayed with some kind of an irritant. Well, what was it? What was he sprayed with? Because it doesn't sound like he was sprayed with like a pepper spray or a mace or anything like that. Because I highly doubt that would do something to somebody unless you empty the whole damn can on them. So it was something else. Like that should have came up in the medical examination as well. Like, because that would most likely be in his pores in his system, because it could have gotten his eyes or his nose or his mouth, which means it should have been something dormant in his system. See, the thing is, they acknowledge that what happened that day contributed to his death, but they're leaning heavily on that he just died of natural causes. So they're basically saying that even if what happened that day didn't happen, he would have had the 2 strokes anyway. Like, that's just that explanation that I just played out in my head that y'all just heard come out of my mouth just sounds disrespectful. Sicknick was among hundreds of officers who confronted the violent mob that took over the Capitol seeking to overturn the election Donald Trump had lost. Nearly 140 officers were assaulted, authorities said, facing some rioters armed with axe handles, bats, metal batons, wooden poles, hockey sticks, and other weapons. You know what's so crazy? You got these PC pundits and their co-colonizing cohorts will tell black people each and every day, up and down, left to right, and everywhere in between, that they need to comply with the police or, nothing will happen to them. Meanwhile, what did they do on January 6th? They went there, had a temper tantrum, and a cop died, and many were assaulted. But then them same PC pundits and the co-colonizing cohorts will make every excuse in the book, in the brochure, and the pamphlet as to why they were just defending their God-given American right to protest. Some people call what happened back in January a protest. They won't call it an invasion, because I know I call it that. They don't want to call it a riot or anything like that. Or what some will say is domestic terrorism. Like, they went out there and showed their ass on the Capitol steps because they were upset for some election results that they didn't want to believe to be true, and probably to this day still don't believe to be true. In early February, Sicknick, who grew up in South River, New Jersey, was honored at the U.S. Capitol. His remains were interred at the Arlington National Cemetery. His death is being investigated by D.C. police, who handle all deaths in the district, the Capitol Police, and the FBI. In a January 8th statement, then acting U.S. Attorney General Jeffrey A. Rosen said Sicknick died of the injuries he suffered defending the U.S. Capitol. He promised that local and federal authorities would spare no resources in investigating and holding accountable those responsible. The Capitol Police said in a statement soon after the riot that Sicknick was injured while physically engaging with protesters. Christopher Geldert, the district's acting deputy mayor for public safety, said Monday that the medical examiner's office took the appropriate amount of time to evaluate all the evidence in Sicknick's death, which he said including reviewing videos, statements from officers, and the results of toxicology screens. Gelder said Diaz felt he was able to make this call in good conscience. In March, 2 men, Julian Eli or Ellie Cater, age 32 of Pennsylvania, and George Pierre Teneos, age 39 of West Virginia, were accused of assaulting Sicknick with chemical spray during the riot. At the time of the arrest, the autopsy had not been completed. Teneos' attorney, Beth Gross, with the Federal Public Defender Service, declined to comment on the ruling. Attorneys for Cater on Monday did not respond to the inquiries. Arrest papers allege that Cater and Teneos were at the Lower West Terrace of the Capitol at 2:14 p.m. on January 6th, where Sicknick and other officers were standing behind metal bicycle racks. Give me that bare shit. I'm guessing that's shit because they blurred it out. Cater said to Teneos on a recorded video, according to court documents. About 9 minutes later, those documents say after Cater said he had been sprayed with something. Cater is seen on video discharging a canister of a toxic substance into the face of Sicknick and 2 other officers. In a statement after Sicknick died, his family said Brian is a hero and that we would like people to remember. The family said at the time that the direct causes of his injuries were unknown. He said, give him that bear shit. I wonder what that is. I wonder if that's code for whatever that was in that can, or if that's what it's called. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, natural causes. Like I said, if he suffered a stroke, it's because of what happened that day. But see, they don't want to take it to that point, because then that means You know, but they, like I said, they are all in bed with each other. Like I said, to the black people that's listening out there, y'all think that white people on code against us is one thing. When they're on code against each other, it's a whole nother monster. And you can see that clearly with here. Like I said, they are on code against a dead man who was a cop, and he was another white man. Like, really let that sink in. Y'all let me know what y'all think about this down in the comments. Like, share, subscribe if you have not done so already. Make sure that you text the number that is pinned down in the comments below to receive notifications every time I upload a video or go live.